Let me go over the rules of tonight's meeting. Each candidate needed to represent him or herself. They could not send any substitutes. And they are all here on time, so we don't need to worry about that issue. Each speaker will have 3 minutes of speaking time, and their speaking order has been determined by draw. We have 2 timekeepers. Dorothy Blaha and Bruce Hutton are here as timekeepers, and they will hold up a sign that says 30 seconds when the candidate has 30 seconds left to speak, and then they will hold up a stop sign when their timer goes off. I don't usually have a problem. Finish your sentence, finish your thought, but if you would then stop after the timer, that would be appreciated. If somebody continues to speak, then Dorothy and Bruce will stand up and remind them they need to stop. If you wish to ask a question, you are going to write it on a note card, and there is a box over there which is now blocked in. So I will put it on this table to make it easier for people to reach. Then I will be pulling the questions out of the box. Before we go on, let me say that there are 2 candidates for council at large. Angela Vanek called today and said she had a family emergency and was not going to be able to make it. There are 4 candidates for Ward 1, and Dan Bennett also called today and his mother passed away. So if you could keep both of them in your thoughts, that would be appreciated. Mr. Patton does not have an opponent, so any questions for council at large will go to him alone. Any questions for Ward 1, I will go to all 3 candidates. The first question will start in the same order of draw, and then after that we'll mix it up a little bit so nobody gets stuck thinking on their feet the first time all the time. Please keep your questions brief and write as neatly as you can. I'm a retired teacher, so I'm used to scrawls, but sometimes I really can't read the questions. If the question is addressed to a specific candidate, all candidates may still answer it. And it is my responsibility to ensure that the questions are kept short. The answers are kept short. I think we will time it for 1 minute. If we decide that's not enough, then we will add to that time. But I'm sorry. But we do want to ask and have answers for as many questions as possible. Please, candidates, in the national debates, they allow people to answer questions that were not the ones asked, but I make you answer the question that's asked. So try to stick to that topic. And over here on the table, I'll have the candidates put some of their literature later on. I do have absentee ballot request forms over there if anybody wanted to fill out that absentee ballot form. Today was the last day to register to vote, so hopefully you're already registered. And remember that the purpose of tonight's meeting is to ensure that you voters are well informed. So please, audience, listen quietly to all of the candidates, whether they're your favorite or not, and allow them to all be heard without distraction. Okay? Thank you very much. So without ado, we will begin with our candidate for council at large, Mr. Robert Patton.
Good evening.
You can stand here or here, whichever you prefer, but you probably want to stand so people in the back can see you.
All right, very well.
Okay.
Do you want me to stand here or at my spot?
You go there.
They're up front.
So you can see.
You'll be closer
Okay.
to the microphone too.
Okay, that's fine. Good evening. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight. It's a great service that they do for our community. Again, my name is Bob Patton. I am presently your president of Willowick City Council. I have served on City Council for over 14 years. Prior to that time, I was on the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I'm asking for your vote this evening, and in return for your vote, I offer you a decade and a half of service to the City of Willowick. I have worked collaboratively with multiple mayors, starting with, pardon my voice this evening, with Mayor Bondi, now Mayor Regovich. What I offer you, aside from my experience, is I am a fiscal conservative. This is not simply a campaign speech, but I have said repeatedly at the table that the money that we oversee and that we spend is not our money. And I've said that repeatedly during meetings over the years. And so if you vote for me, I will continue to protect your money and make sure that it's spent wisely, and if at all possible, to avoid any tax increases. What I want to offer in exchange for your hard-earned money and for your tax money is the efficient administration of city services. And obviously, we're talking about emergency services, we're talking about plowing the streets and picking up the garbage, but also the services that are offered by our recreation department. One of the things that sets Willowick apart from other cities are the offerings that we have for families and for people of all ages to engage in recreation. And it's a value-added thing that the city of Willowick offers. My vision for the city that I share with the mayor is a place where people can live here all stages of their life. Whether they're young and growing up, we offer recreation. When they're young, we have starter homes, more affordable homes, excuse me, and then other homes as they move on. As they move later on in life, as we've seen on the lakefront, we offer retirement apartments as well as condominiums. And so I've worked with Mayor Bondi and Mayor Regovich to make that vision happen. And so again, I'm asking for your vote, and I will be a steward of your money, and I offer you my experience and knowledge that I've gained in a decade and a half of serving the city of Willowick. Thank you.
Our first speaker, who is a candidate for Ward 1, and let me remind you, there are 4 candidates. You will be voting for 2. So our first candidate to speak tonight is Monica Kudela. Did I say that?
Yes. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Wait, John Fox. Wait, for a candidate.
No, sir.
Council.
Hello, I'm Monica Cadella, and I'm current Ward 1 representative, and Willowick is my home. It always has been, and it always will be. It's important to me. I grew up here, and I actually still live in the same place. I went to Royal View, I went to Willowick Middle, and I graduated from North. Growing up, you could find me playing city softball league, enjoying one of the pools with my friends. My sister and I used to walk to Dudley to play. Sorry. I love Willowick. Anyways, we'd walk to Uncle Bob's, we'd walk over to CP's, enjoy a treat. As a child, one of my favorite things was always the city parade, and I still love it today. I love that it brings the community together and to celebrate this great city. It's a joy to both watch the parade and to be in it. As an adult, my husband and I chose to keep calling Willowick home. He also grew up here, and the two of us have made our own investment in the city. We replaced my childhood home with a new one that would suit us to raise a family and ultimately retire. Willowick is not only where I live, it's where I spend most of my time. My husband's family lives here, and many of our friends live here. So we're always spending time doing whatever we can in the city. Most days, you'll find me at the License Bureau. I've been there for 14 years, and I've been managing it for the past 8. While working there, I also commuted to Lake Erie College. While I was there, I earned a bachelor's degree in accounting, and I brought that degree back here as well, and I utilize it by preparing income tax returns at Huff Tax Service. In January, I'll start my 10th tax season there. Not only do I live and work here, but I shop here too. I believe shopping local and supporting small businesses. You'll see me filling up at the OK Car Wash or over at Get Go. You'll see me eating at PD's and then obviously going to CP's Cooler for dessert. And you'll see me shopping at Aldi's, Giant Eagle, and Ace Hardware. That, to me, is one of the best parts of the city. Everything's close by. I really don't even have to leave. Willowick really is great living on a great lake, and there's no other place that I would rather call home. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm going to get an introduction.
Okay,
or not.
who is next?
I am.
Okay, if you would.
Thank you for taking over my job.
Did you want to formally introduce or no?
Sure. Not that I've lost my paper. Okay, our second candidate, that's the wrong one. I apologize, this kind of threw me. Our second candidate for Ward 1 is Mr. Steve Hemmerich.
Thank you.
Hemmerich?
Yes. Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. My name's Steve Hemmerich, and I'm running for council for Ward 1. To tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a graduate of Willoughby South, class of 1989. I've been a homeowner here in Willowick since 1999. I'm married to my wife, Deborah, who's here tonight with me. We have one son, Derek, who's a graduate of Eastlake North, and he's married to his wife, Taylor. We have one grandchild. Her name's Elise, and we're expecting our second grandchild here in November. I'm a small business owner of Professional Appraisals, Inc. I'm a certified residential real estate appraiser. I have a love for sports and animals. I've been a Little League baseball coach in the cities of Willowick and Eastlake. I've also been a little youth football head coach in the city of Eastlake. Some of my goals, if I were to be elected, would be to establish and maintain a fiscally responsible budget, improve our infrastructure, develop the lakefront, attract and pursue more additional retail business, creative revenue generation to lessen tax burden on the residents, more community events like the Willowick Citywide Garage Sale and other events and festivals that could potentially bring in more revenue and more enjoyment for the residents, and maintain and expand senior citizen activities and activities for our children. And I'd also like to see stricter school bus laws. My pledge to the residents of Ward 1 is to always be available anytime you have questions or concerns. And if I don't have the answer, I'll make sure to do whatever steps are necessary to find out those questions or answers for you. I'll constantly look for ways to make the city of Willowick better for all of us. I'll work with the rest of the city council and the mayor to always put the residents and our city first. And I welcome the opportunity to serve you guys. And again, my name's Steve Hemmerich, and I'm asking for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
And our third candidate for Ward 1 is Mr. Michael Vanny.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight, and thank you for all coming out. My name is Michael Vanny. I've had the honor and privilege of being the representative of Ward 1 Councilman for the last 15 years for the residents, and it's been really great. We've lived here for over 32 years. In addition to being a councilman for the last 15 years, I was involved in the city before then. I played a small but pretty important role in getting Band Reactivity Center built, which is now the Richard Bondi Activity Center. Played a role in that before. I was involved in coaching at St. Mary Magdalene. I was the Athletic Association president there for 2 years. Coached baseball and baseball and basketball at St. Mary Magdalene. Coached football, basketball, and baseball in the city of Willowick. In addition to being a councilman, I'm now the chair of the Streets, Sidewalks, and Sewers Committee. I'm also the chair of the Finance Committee, and I'm also the chair of the Budget Committee, which I'm very proud of what we've done and very excited to be doing that. The reason I'm running again is because we've got some important decisions coming up. Whether this levy passes or not, there's still going to be some tough decisions that have to be made. I feel my experience of being on council for 15 years, I'm really qualified, if not best qualified, to make those decisions. And I'm asking for your vote respectfully on November 5th. Thank you.
Okay, at this point we have a few questions, and let me just explain. Mr. Fox believed that he was listed as a candidate with the Board of Elections. I had my official paper, which does not list him from the Board of Elections, so they're trying to, he's going to call the Board of Elections tomorrow and try to find out what's going on. So I just wanted to let you know, at this point, we don't have him as an official candidate. I'm going to start with a question for Ward 1. There was a question for Angela Vanek, but as she's not here, I'm not going to ask that one.
Could you please still read that? I feel that it should be addressed.
Ma'am, I would object. That's not in compliance with the rules.
Right, thank you. And as her opponent objects, I'm going to skip that question. The first question is for the candidates, well, it was specifically addressed to Mr. Hemrich. I'm going to let all three answer it, but we will begin with him. So it says, you refer to fiscally responsible budget in the Courier. How do you explain 2 federal tax liens for 4 years, 2011, 12, 13, and 14, totaling nearly $30,000? And many of us are self-employed, not paid as the IRS records. I'm not sure what that means. But I guess, why don't you address how you would be fiscally responsible with the budget?
I'm still trying to understand what the first part was.
So am I. I will let you read it. So I would say the question is asking about your fiscal responsibility.
If it's addressing my taxes, I am self-employed. I did, over a 2-year period, have taxes, which I made arrangements. I have no liens that I'm aware of. I've never been served any liens. I did make any arrangement to do a payback, and I'm currently paying all my taxes, so I don't understand that, to be honest with you. That's kind of thrown me for a loop.
How would you address fiscal responsibility for the city of Willowick?
Well, fiscally responsible is, we're known as a bed and breakfast community, so we pretty much rely strictly on retail and our residents for most of our funding. So we're limited in what we can do. We've got to be careful how we spend our money. I've kind of looked at what the budget's been like in the past, and quite honestly, I think current council's done a pretty good job of our tax. I mean, I think it's 13 to 14 million, and Bob or Mike might know better what our total number is, what we bring in and stuff. Is that about right?
The overall budget for 2019 was like 19 million.
Oh, it's up there.
It's
Okay.
closer to 20 million.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 19.3.
So, I mean, we have to,
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of room for error with stuff. I mean, we don't have a lot of money coming in, so, that's what I mean by being fiscally responsible, making sure we're making smart decisions.
Very good, thank you. Mrs. Kudela, how would you address fiscal responsibility for the city of Willowick?
Like Steve had mentioned, being responsible for the income that we have and spending it wisely. There's always a difficult choice to make. Everybody always wants more with less money, city residents, everybody. So making the best choices with the money that we have, to me, would be fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Van?
Thank you. I think we have been pretty fiscally responsible. Our funds have been going down steadily. Property taxes, revenue's been going down steadily for the last 8 years, but we've kind of offset that with, we've kind of put a hold on hiring. We've done more with less in all our departments. We finally bought a service truck this past year, but they're running 20, 25 years, which is way over what we've been doing. But all our departments are running pretty much. They're thin, but we've been doing more for less, and they're all doing a really good job. But I think it comes to a point where you've got to come and you got to ask, and I think that's where the income tax levy is. But I think as far as responsible, we're there right now. We're doing everything we account, we do the budget, we go over every line. Every February we have a budget meeting, we go over every line with all the directors, every line of the budget. We know where everything's going. We just got to keep on top of that. I also try to have I do have quarterly meetings. So this year we've only had 2, so because of the election coming up, I missed the one in the third quarter, that on purpose. But I've always had quarterly meetings to make sure that we're still on pace with our budget projections that come out in February. So, there's always more we can do, and I think we're trying to do that. But I would have to say we just got to keep doing more with less, and like we've been doing. I think we've been doing a really good job of that, to be perfectly honest with you. So, thank you.
Very good. As a related question, list examples that would help you generate new revenue. And I'm going to ask that to all 4 candidates. And because we haven't picked on him yet, I'm going to begin with Mr. Patton.
Can I go back and just address the earlier
Yes.
question, if that's okay?
Yes.
So I think if we talk about fiscal responsibility, I think fiscal responsibility arises from fiscal transparency. So, and again, I brought this as a prop, but years ago, one of the things I've done in my last term has signed the city of Willowick up for OhioCheckbook.com. And so our financial statements are regularly uploaded onto this site. So any resident at any time can log on to this website and see how their money is spent. I would also very briefly repeat Councilman Vanny's remarks that we have an open budget meeting. We spend an entire Saturday going through it. That budget that's a public meeting that is announced. After the public meeting, then the budget is reduced to the form of an ordinance, and that ordinance is always placed on 3 readings. So any resident has 6 weeks to look over the budget, and for that entire time, the proposed budget is placed up on the city's website so anybody can look at it. To answer the second question, one of the things I would do to try to raise revenue is to try to get businesses, into the city. If we have to offer something like tax abatement for a short term, I think the city could use a facelift with some of the businesses, in particular in the area of 288th and Lakeshore, as well as the Vine Street corridor. I know the mayor has been working on that. We have an economic development director. We see a Dunkin' Donuts going up that was in an empty lot before. So I think one of the things that I envision is bringing in businesses in here to try to increase revenue into the city. I see my sign. Thank you.
Mr. Vanny, would you like to address?
Yes, please, thank you. You know, this is another reason why I'm running for council again, when I'm running for re-election, is because though we have some tough decisions coming up, we definitely have some exciting things coming up that are in the early stages. We've got the Lakefront Development Project that really could take us to another level. Vine Street Corridor is definitely moving along with our economic development manager, Monica Drake, who we share with, again, cost savings with Kirtland and Wycliffe. She's really done a good job of getting us grants. We've got grants for both those projects, that are studies that are in the early stages. She's done a phenomenal job. We've worked with her. I've worked with her and the mayor privately on some stuff with Shoregate, which really can't go into because of the business. But we're working with them to try to expand, keep expanding, and get those buildings out in front and get those things occupied. You know what I'm working on, because one of our other than taking care of the money, which is our number one priority, we legislate with ordinances. I'm right now working with the law director, and it could increase revenue, but it's more of a good neighbor thing. I'm working on getting an ordinance in where if the building department comes out to your house or the police department comes out to your house 3 times, it's documented. That 3rd time they come out, we're going to go to the owner and fine you a $500 fee. And it's not because, yes, it would increase revenue, but the biggest thing in my 15 years of all my calls is I get people complaining about a bad neighbor. And you don't have to get along with your neighbor. It's nice if you say hi to them, but you should be able to respect who you're living next to. And they should be able to respect you. And I think that's something we're working on. I'm hoping I can get that done before the end of the year, before council. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kudell.
Like Bob and Mike both have said already, there's already things in progress to help increase revenue. Like they've mentioned, our new economic development coordinator. She works with the mayor, she works with council and outside parties to help bring in businesses, to help bring in more revenue generating things. As well, we were awarded the 2 grants to develop the Vine Street corridor, which would go from Vine Street and Lakeshore all the way to downtown Willoughby, to make that area more attractive, more uniform, and more usable by both pedestrians and public transportation and bikes. And then we have the lakefront development area that would help, again, bring in more businesses and make that area more useful to our residents. Both of those things naturally will drive up property values, so we see an increase in revenue that way. So it's not something that's going to be fixed overnight or happen overnight. They're works in progress, and we continue to work on those and develop, and we just unfortunately have to wait for them to get better. Thank you.
Very good. And Mr. Hemmer.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How exactly would you contribute, or how would you generate new revenue?
Okay. Like so many of you, I know one of the things we see a lot is the Vine Street and Shoregate with the latest loss of Factitans and stuff, so we're, obviously the retail side's leaving. I'd like to talk to some of the owners of those buildings and other ones to find out what they're doing, how they're promoting their building, what we can do to help promote that. I'd like to see, everybody would like to see more businesses here. I think with Amazon and other things coming into play, it's making it harder, you know, for that. So we've got to try and make our city more attractive. Other ideals as far as creative revenue generation, I know, and Angela Vanek, who's not here, she's brought it up before, and I've talked with her too about it. Different ideas around the city. Parking's an issue in our city. I live on 329th. We have a single driveway. Luckily, my son's older now. Many residents have multiple people in their house. Kids now drive, so they're pulling cars out, playing moving the car game and stuff. You know, it's been discussed and talked about potentially trying to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, by maybe doing something with like parking passes. Or if you're a resident, you can buy a parking pass that would allow you to park on the street overnight and also help generate, you know, money for the city. The other possibility or ideals that were brought up is, and I don't know all the details, I'll be honest, I'm still trying to learn as much as I can about the city and the inside workings, is, you know, my understanding is we're losing a lot of revenue on the different, I forget the word now. I just drew a blank. The different inspections and stuff. My understanding is now Lake County does most of it, so we're not getting that money from that. And I don't know if that's because the new director's in place and is not qualified to do it, but I'd like to visit that and find out how we can get more with that.
Okay, thank you all.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
He mentioned something my opponent is proposing. May I respond to that, please?
We'll give you 30 seconds.
All right, 30 seconds. I think overnight parking is a terrible idea, except in the rare instance. I think if you're having your new driveway poured, that's one thing. But I think overnight parking gives criminals a place to ditch their car on the street. And I can't imagine what it would be like if we had a significant snow event, how the snow plows would get up and down our roads if we had people parking overnight parking on the streets. I know we want to raise revenue. That's not the way to do it. Thank you.
I'm going to do this on the fly. How about if all of you candidates, you have a notepad in front of you, take notes, and at the end of our question period, about 7:45, I'm going to give you each 3 minutes to address anything that has come up that you think is inappropriate or in contrast to your thoughts. For rebuttal, right. So the next question basically is, how do you plan on developing our lakefront without eminent domain? So let's begin with Mrs. Kudella this time.
Well, the grant that we're working on is to develop the area that's currently owned by the city. So where City Hall is, the Lakefront Lodge, and the house next door. So we would use that area, prime real estate, lakefront, rather than eminent domain. So the plan is in process. You know, it's right now in the grant stage, so they're planning. They're trying to come up with a plan of what we can do there. I would love to see small businesses in there. I would love to see access to the lake. It would be great to have something similar to downtown Willoughby, but for ourselves here, so we don't have to go any farther. So potentially housing, but personally I wouldn't want to see that. I would rather see small businesses, a park, a fountain would be great, something that we can enjoy as residents. Thank you.
Mr. Vanning, would you like to respond to that?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I agree 100% with Councilwoman Cadella. She's right, that's what we're looking at, developing where City Hall is, the fire department, police department, all over there, the metro parks are. That's where we're looking to develop the lakefront. I can tell you unequivocally, eminent domain has not come up, and I don't want it coming up. It just doesn't make sense. It's just, I'm not a big fan of eminent domain unless, you know, you've got a blighted area. And I don't think we have any blighted, in fact, we don't have any blighted areas, so, yeah, it's not part of the equation, and it's not part of the lakefront development plan.
Very good. Mr. Helmer.
I'm not for eminent domain whatsoever myself, and I do believe the lakefront is probably our biggest asset. I am definitely for developing that lakefront, whether it be by retail, that would enhance and not detract too much of it. I don't want to take away from our lakefront. I look at, I don't know if you've seen it, but Lakewood did the Solstice Steps, which I thought was fabulous. They have a Lakewood Park, it's bigger than ours, but it's similar with at the end, it just kind of dropped off. There was a lake. They built this whole Solstice Steps with walkways and stuff, and it's a little bit more access along the lake. I'd love to see something like that for our residents. And like I've said before, I think that that would give us a landmark. It would enhance our quality of life, strengthen our home values, and hopefully create more economic development. So I'm all for developing the lakefront. Retail, it'd be great to make money off of our lake, but I don't want to do so much that the residents can't ever enjoy it, or that whatever's on there, nobody can afford it. It's high-end stuff that, you know, we might not. So if it makes sense to add retail and develop it for residential use, that's what I'd like to see.
Very good. Mr. Patton?
That question takes me back to the future. That question was a hot issue about 10 to 12 years ago when I first started on council. The case law has changed from the Supreme Court to make it easier. I think that absent a compelling government purpose, such as putting a highway in or something of that gravity, I think it's against the 8th Amendment to the Constitution as an unlawful taking. I'm against it. I believe in private property rights. I think if the city wants to buy a piece of property as any other buyer in the market, that's one thing, but to use the process of eminent domain to take somebody's property forcibly, I think is wrong, and I'm against it. I was against it 12 years ago, and I'm against it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I got all four of you, right? The next question, we'll begin with Mr. Vanny. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most in favor, how do you rate resurfacing Lake Shore Boulevard and Vine Street? And if you're in favor, when do you think this could happen?
Well, we did part of Lake Shore last year by Shoregate, which was a big undertaking. We do have plans with the Vine Street corridor that would include redoing Vine Street with streets, lighting, streetscape, signage. So that is in the works. How far down, I'm not going to tell. It's down the road. Like I said, we got the grant. We're doing the study. I'm hoping it's sooner than later, but I don't want to throw out a number right now because I'd just be guessing. The other part of Lake Shore right now, it's not in the plans, but I know it's going to need to be addressed sooner than later. So, you know, we look at the streets every year. We look at all our streets. Our directors come out, our service department comes out, and we take a look at which ones are the worst. We try to find which ones need the most attention, and that's what we go to. Now, I know in my ward, we've been doing a lot in Ward 1. So there's a lot of sewer rehab in Ward 1, but 330th got done a few years ago, and that took a while to get to because we had to replace all the water lines, and that street probably was the worst street in Willowick. We didn't want to go and just, you know, pave it, knowing that we had to go tear up everything again to get the sewer lines in. So that took a little longer than we wanted to, but that's been done. We're doing sewer rehab on East 327th and East 329th. So we're methodically getting to all these streets. It's just taking longer than I think we all want, but we are getting there, and we do put it high on our priority list every year. Thank you.
Mr. Patton?
Yes, we have an annual road program. That's one of the streets that we're considering. The question was about Lakeshore Boulevard.
And Vine Street.
And Vine Street. Those are both state routes, so we have to deal with the state of Ohio as money permits, as grants permit. And I'm certainly in favor of doing everything we can to improve those streets, given the amount of traffic that they have. But I think that we have to balance it against the other financial demands of the city. So as money permits and as grants permit, yes, of course.
Very good. Mr. Helmer?
I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because I don't really know what they already have in the works or what's going on with that. I obviously think it's very important to have our main roads resurfaced and taken care of, but I also think a lot of our residential streets need a lot of help, so I'd be looking at those as well. Now, I am on 329th, and it's been a long process for ours. They did the sewers, I think, a couple years ago. They've kind of gone back a few different times. We thought 2 years ago we were going to get our sewers and streets done, and we're still waiting, and I don't know when that is going to happen. I think the sewers are all done, but I don't know about when paving is going to be done. I know that there's the new gas tax increase, 10 cents, that is each city will get, and that's supposed to go specifically towards roads and maintaining of the roads, so I think that will help us. And I'd also, not so much about the repaving, but I know there's a big topic on Vine Street, right where CP's, that corner of Vine and Willowick. There's been a lot of accidents, mostly when you're coming from Walmart, heading up towards Lake Shore. People always want to cut over from that turning lane only into that lane. I know it's been brought up at council meetings about trying to address that, so I'd like to look into that as well, besides the resurfacing, but make that area a little bit safer because there's been a lot of accidents.
Very good. Mrs. Kudella.
So the question was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it? So it's pretty high up there. I'd say it's 10. Vine Street and Lake Shore are traveled by every resident at least once a day. Well, twice. You got to go there and back. So I definitely want to see it repaved. Like Bob mentioned, it is a state route, so it's not something that we can do by ourselves. It does involve ODOT, so it's a lot depends on them when they decide to do it, when they have the funds available to do it. And then our funds come into that play as well. Part of why we've asked for the income tax increase on the ballot was so that we are eligible to do things like this. We sometimes might get a grant for a road or a recreation fund or something like that, but we need to have funds available to match that, or we have to put the money up front and then we're reimbursed. So we need money available in the general fund so that we can do things like that. So I hope they can be done. I've heard it should be in the next few years, but who knows? Just things change. ODOT can change their mind at any time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the first part of this question was obviously addressed to someone specific, but there's no name. So I'm just going to read it and then ask the last part of the question. It says, your campaign ad in the Willowick Courier states that you were the only member of council to vote against consultant hired to promote proposed November 2018 tax increase. Would you approve the tax increase? So do any of you know if it was addressed to you?
I know who that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's on my literature right here.
So we will begin with you.
All right, so the first thing I want to say is, when we disagree at city council, it's not personal. I do not question the motives of the mayor or anyone that voted in favor of what I'm discussing, and I'm certainly not going to attack them personally. It's a matter of principle. The whole purpose of the income tax was to ask the residents for more money. When this measure was placed before us last summer, the thought was to hire a consultant and pay $28,000 for that consultant to try to sell the tax increase to you, the residents. And again, I'm not attacking Mr. Vanny or anybody else who wasn't supporting it. But what I will say is I had a problem with it because I did not believe that the proposal was very specific in terms of what he was going to do for the amount of money he was charging. And I'm used to seeing billable time, and I didn't really see value for what we were getting. And as a matter of principle, I didn't think it was appropriate to spend your money to ask you to give us more money. I thought that was my issue with it. I know that they had a different view, and I respect everybody on the other side of this issue. The problem that I have with the tax increase is that if you do that, then that money will be temporarily available in the general fund for a relatively short amount of time. And then when we go through contract negotiations, those monies tend to go away and get subsumed into contracts as time goes on. I believe that the residents of this city pay a lot of money in taxes, especially in property taxes. And unfortunately, we have to make hard choices. But I don't believe the way out of our fiscal situation is to tax you, the taxpayer, more. You have to stretch your money, we have to stretch ours. And so I'm going to have an article in the Courier like I had last November. I'm against it for that reason. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vanny.
Oh, thank you. Yes, with all due respect to Mr. Patton, we respectfully disagree on a lot of things, which is great, because I think you need to hear the other side. And never do we question anyone's motives. Never. Never comes up, because we're all here to do the right thing. Yes. I am for the tax increase. However, I do, but let me backtrack to the important thing, was the consultant fee, because I did vote yes on it, and it was a very, very tough decision. I know some of the people here were there that night, and I don't want to say grill, but I did give the gentleman in question a lot of questions because I wasn't sold on it 100%. At first, we went through, And at the end of the day, my decision was to vote yes for it because I was for the tax increase. I wanted to make sure that we got the information out to the people so they can make the right call, or not the right call, but so they make an informative call. And that's why I voted yes. You know, you don't want to leave anything unturned when you go into an election. You want to make sure you got everything covered. You want to do everything you can so that you don't have any regrets the next day. That's what I was taught a long time ago when I ran. So at the end of the day, I said, you know what? I know I'm going to catch some heat for it, but I think we got to make sure we get information out to the residents, and hopefully this is the best way to do it. So I stand by the decision. I own that decision, no problem at all. As far as the tax increase goes, I was a little reluctant to put it back on the ballot again this time because it did lose by a pretty good margin. Ultimately, I thought we put it on because it wasn't a special election, but I'm willing to do whatever the residents say. I believe we need it, but if residents go in and they should turn it down again, I'm willing to make those tough decisions either way. And I got to tell you, there's going to be tough decisions whether this levy passes or not. So, but I'm willing to do that. And I think my experience shows that. Over the last 15 years, I've been able to prove that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Cordella?
So the first thing I want to address is the consultants. You know, like Mike and Bob said, when they first came up with this proposal, I wasn't in support of it. Like Bob said, why should we spend money to ask people to give us more money? After the proposal that they gave, the purpose of the consultant was to help the city, educate the residents on why we needed the income. You know, we have not seen an income tax increase, property or income, if I'm correct, for 20 years. So we are trying to do more with less money. So, like they both mentioned, I believe that people should make an educated decision. You know, have those same facts, and hopefully when you see those things, you'll decide to agree to the income tax increase. So I don't think the consultants provided the service that they said they would. We wanted them to educate the residents. We wanted to provide that information and facts, and they didn't. So looking back, it was the wrong choice. You know, we shouldn't have used that money because they didn't uphold their end of the deal. At the time, I think it was the right choice had they done their share, their part. We've talked about property taxes being high. They are high. Mine are very high. But not much of that goes to the city. You know, we know most of it goes to the school district. So we can't put too much weight on that because the city doesn't get that much of it. As far as the income tax goes, I don't want to pay more taxes. Nobody wants to pay more taxes. But I also want to keep my city great. So if that means paying 0.5% more of income tax, then that's what I'll do. Thank you.
Mr. Hillman?
So just so I'm clear, the question's a tax increase, and what was the other?
Well, you were
About
not
the
on council with
That's
the
right.
consultants. So would you approve the tax increase?
Would I approve the tax increase? I feel like anybody that's currently running for council right now, we're kind of at a disadvantage because we don't really know how stuff's been running and how it's been working. We're aware of some stuff, you know, we're aware obviously about the proposal. My issue, I guess, as a resident not running for council is, you know, when there was this need to put it on, I don't really remember hearing a lot from council and everybody telling us and explaining to us why. You know, if I'm wrong, correct me, and once it failed the first time, it was brought in, you know, it's going to be proposed again. I still haven't seen an outpour from our council saying, you know, this is why we need it. Explain stuff more to me as a resident, why I'm paying more taxes. And everybody here knows we've been hammered. We just got the assessed values in August of last year. We have, the city wants money, the schools want money, Lake Tran wants money, everybody wants money. Only so much can go around right now. I was naive. I just thought, hey, I pay my taxes for my house and it goes to my city and you guys take care of it, make my city great. And when I finally did research, I realized, wow, and I've seen a few different figures, so like most politics, you can't always get the right answer, but I believe it's roughly around 60 or so percent that go to the schools. Only 20% goes to our city, which, to be honest, that blew me away. I thought my city got more of my tax money. So I don't have the inside knowledge. I'm trying to learn it, as I go. I know most of the council I've talked to here and people that are running. My big fear for running for council was I'm not a politician. I don't have the experience. I've never really, but I'm more interested in my city. I'm a long-term resident. I believe I'm going to retire here, and I'd like to see that change. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question, and again, I'm not a Willowick resident, so I'm not up on some of this stuff. Can you tell us if the development of Larimar, with its newest divisions and sections, still has a 75% tax abatement? So, Mr. Patton, let's start with you.
I don't know off the top of my head, but if it does, I believe it's limited. So I mean, frankly, I'm not going to insult your intelligence. I could certainly find that out. Assuming that is correct, I can't imagine a tax abatement would go on forever. So if there is a tax abatement, it is for a limited amount of time. But that's frankly something I'd have to research.
Okay, does anyone else?
Is that
know?
tax abatement for the builders and stuff, or for the residents, for their?
Well, can I speak?
Yes,
to that?
please, yeah.
I'm not sure if what they mean by tax abatement. So, for example, in Shoreland Crossings, a portion of the tax money is used to pay the $2 million that the city paid to have that portion transferred from old Shoregate West, and so it's a TIF. It's called tax incremental financing. And so a portion of, I mean, I live in Shoreland Crossings, and I have no say as to where my money goes. But what happens is a portion of the money I pay in property taxes is diverted to the city to pay the note back that the city fronted to help finance the redevelopment, the demolition, and the parking lot. So when they say tax abatement, that's typically in the context of a business. If they mean a TIF, which is why I'm not sure what the question means.
Right.
I don't believe any tax money was used for that, or if it's an abatement situation. So I'm not going to sit here and guess and make up an answer to look good for the camera. I would research that, but most of those things are limited.
Very good, thank you. Does anybody else have any further knowledge of that? Mr.
Yes,
Patton.
thank you. Yeah, Council President Patton is correct. It is a TIF for the
Okay.
Shorelands Crossings. There's no tax abatement. It was actually, they don't do the TIF anymore because it was such an advantage to cities which would be able to take advantage. I think we might have been one of the last cities to take advantage of it before the state stopped it. There's no tax abatement in Larimar that I'm aware of. And I'm like 99.9999% sure that there's no tax payment. In fact, I'm 100% sure there's no tax payment. So, but on the question of tax abatement, I don't want, that's another topic. I'm just going to stay quiet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to start at this end this time. What is your one main goal as a council person? And let's begin with Mr. Helmrich.
Main goal.
What would be your one main goal if you're elected?
I guess my main goal is, if I were to be elected, I'd like to be a part of developing our lakefront. Like I said before, I think that's our biggest asset to our city. We're only a handful of cities that live along the lake, and we don't do anything with it. I mean, there's the park there, and that is nice, but it's limited. I'd love to see where, and I wasn't aware until about a month or so ago that we did purchase, and I don't know how long ago they purchased the other property to the left, I believe, of City Hall. I don't know how long we've had it for. I know there's a house there. I don't know what the plans are. I don't know why it's sat for so long, or if we've just recently gotten it, but I'd love to see that develop more. Like I said, I'm not opposed for retail going in if it makes sense and it enhances. I don't want it to be overrun, and the people that are building and having those businesses are making all the money, and we the residents can't enjoy it. Like I said, if you haven't seen it, I really like what Lakewood did with the Solstice Steps, or something along that line, somehow to enjoy and enhance the lakefront living for us so that we can enjoy it. We're here in this city, and that'd probably be one of the biggest things I'd be looking at.
Very good. Mrs. Kudela.
My main goal, which I think is the biggest challenge to the city, is to increase revenue in ways other than property and income taxes. As we've mentioned before, we want to see development of the lakefront. I want to see that a more usable space. That'll increase property values, which then would naturally bring in more revenue that way. It will attract more people to our hometown, hopefully working people, so then we'll naturally get increased income tax that way without having to increase the rates. I want Willowick to continue to be great. We have a great senior center. We want to keep that. We have a great recreation department. We want to keep that. Increasing revenue will help increase all of those. We have a great service department. We have a great building department, and we need to continue to support them the way they support us as residents. So increasing revenue is my main goal. Like we've already said, things are already in place to help do that. And we just need to continue working together so that those things continue to progress. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vanny.
Thank you. I would say it'd be infrastructure with the sewers and the streets, and I'm really excited. We just had a street sidewalks and sewer meeting last week, actually, before the council meeting, and I like the strides we're making. I want to keep going, especially in Ward 1. We've done a lot of work with the sewer rehab because we are the oldest part of the city. So the streets are older, the sewers are older, and we're really making some headway there. It's so expensive, but I want to keep that progress going, keep that momentum going. I think we can do it. We've been cost effective with lining the sewers on East 327th. It shows that it works. We just got a grant to do. We did the south side last year. We got a grant to do the north side, hopefully for next year. So not only are we being cost effective, things are working, but there's still a lot of work to be done, as obviously you can see throughout the streets. I mean, there's a lot of streets that need work and the sewers need work. So we're getting there, but I want to just keep that momentum going over the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Patton.
My main goal is to protect your tax money, plain and simple. What is the core function of City Council? We are a legislative branch, and so we approve the budget. It's the single most important thing that we do. And I agree with all the ideas that have been mentioned, but if we don't have the money to keep the police, to have your garbage picked up, to plow the streets, nothing else matters. And so my single goal, every day I've been on council for the past 14 years, is protect your tax money. And that's what I've done. Now, part of that would include trying to encourage business development and have businesses come in here and use tax abatement to get them in here and get them to invest. But high taxes affect all of us, whether you're retired or you're a young family or you're in the middle of things like my wife and I are with our teenage daughters. It affects us all. And so that's my main goal, is to protect your tax money, and we do that through the budgeting process. Thank you.
This is my last question right now, so if anybody else has any questions, please pass them to the front and I will get them. This is for all candidates, and it's please state how many years of experience in city government you have. And I would also add, how long have you lived in the community? So how long have you lived here and how many years of experience do you have? And let's begin with Mr. Vanny.
Thank you. I've lived in Willowick for 32 years, a little over 32 years, and my experience in government is 15 years as the Ward 1 councilman. I also was involved, not in any committees, but I was involved with, I got really involved with the Manry project. And I got involved with a couple of the councilmen, did some work with them, helped them out a little bit. Like I said, I had a small role, but an important role. And that kind of, I used that to get into where I'm at now. So that's basically where it's at.
Very good.
Thanks.
Mrs. Kudela.
I've been a resident of Willowick my whole life. I've been here 30 years. And like I said, I don't plan on going anywhere. I've been on council for 3.5 years. I replaced Mayor Regovich when he was appointed after Mayor Bondi passed away. But prior to that, I've been coming to council meetings since 2011. Sat in the back and just listened. And so then when that situation arose, I applied and then was appointed to take over at that time.
Mr. Hemrick.
I have zero experience any political. I don't really consider myself a political guy, I guess, but I guess now I am. I've been a homeowner for 20 plus years. My mom's been a homeowner since 30 plus years, so I've lived on and off in the city of Willowick for 30 years, and homeowner is my own and my wife for 20.
Okay. And Mr. Patton.
Thank you. My wife and I bought our first home on 294th in December of 1998. We talked about my campaign ad together in almost 21 years. So I have over 20 years of Lisa and I living here. We're raising our 3 daughters here. I first became involved in government in 2003, if my memory's correct, serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals. I was invited by now Judge O'Donnell and Mayor Bondi to serve on that. I then became elected to Ward 3 Council in July of 2005. So I've been on City Council for over 14 years. The last 6 years I have served as Council President. That is what I offer. As you hear from the questions and the issues that we are facing and that we've been discussing, now is not the time for on-the-job training. Experience matters. Thank you.
Any other questions on Okay, again, I'm not a Willowick resident, so I'm not quite sure what this is asking. But the question is, can anyone speak or clear the air on the Palumbo issue? And I will begin with Mr. Pat.
Yes. So I have spoken on this issue many times on the record. And on this matter, I will say, as I always have, and I see folks nodding up front because they've heard this. The first thing I want to say is that our heart goes out to the Palumbo family. We respect his service, and his family has our sympathies for their loss. The issue with Palumbo is a complex legal issue. So it involves the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. So there's 2 issues that are in play. One is that he worked for multiple cities. So that's a complicating issue. And the other issue talks about whether his condition was a result of his service as a fireman. And so while we respect all of that, if there is a finding against the city of Willowick, what will happen is that our premiums that we pay into workers' comp will go up exponentially. So I've heard it said that it's insurance money, it doesn't matter. Well, that's not true. We all have auto policies, and if you get into a car accident, your premiums are going up. And so we have a responsibility to the residents of this city, despite his honorable service, to try to protect your tax money. And my understanding from speaking with our attorneys is that part of the judgment that is now against the city of Willowick does include his salary when he was a captain with Beechwood. That is part of the calculation. And so I don't believe that the residents of Willowick should indirectly pay for that service when the city of Beechwood settled. They're self-insured. They settled with the Palumbo family. And so it's unfortunate that it's come to this, but I would refer you to some of my prior statements that I've made at City Council where I spoke at length on this issue, and I'd be happy to discuss it with anybody at the conclusion of this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Van.
Yes, thank you. I would mirror 100% what Council President Patton said. I'm going to tell you what I've said in council and what I've actually said to the fire department. Me and the mayor had a 3-hour meeting with the fire department about a month and a half ago. And to me, it comes down to one issue. And this is where you've got to go. And another thing I learned a long time ago when I took this job is you got to leave your emotions at the door. You can't go in there making decisions emotionally in this job. You just can't. And my heart goes out to the family. I knew briefly, I know his brother briefly. It's just a terrible situation. But at the end of the day, to me, it comes down to I've got to protect the money. That's our number one job. I've got to be able to answer the question, why are we paying a claim on a salary that he did not make in Willowick? And until I get that answer from someone above, I can't. I don't have an answer for the residents. And that's my only issue on that. And again, I told that directly to all the firemen when we had that meeting with them too. So, thank you.
Mrs. Goodell.
First and foremost, it is a terrible situation. I can't imagine what his wife and his family have gone through and continue to go through. This definitely was not an easy decision. You know, we got a lot of information from the lawyers, and we've discussed the situation. And you know, I like to think that I can see both sides of every situation. And unfortunately, especially in this case, you have to pick a side. Justice is what we were looking for. You know, we want fairness from Workers' Comp and the Industrial Commission, and it's my opinion that we haven't achieved that yet. It's not anything that I want anybody to go through, but given the information that we provided, it was in the city's best interest to appeal the claim, to appeal the ruling. The increase to premiums would cost us residents much more than what has been spent so far to discuss this claim. And like I said, it was not an easy decision, but given the information, it's a decision I would make again. Thank you.
Mr. Helmrich.
We're not privy to a lot. Obviously, with it being a legal matter, we don't know. I've heard stuff. I've talked with some people that know this side. Hearing a little bit, I'd like to understand council's side and their reasoning for against it. I think anybody logically, if they hear the story, would say, I'm for the Palumbo family. We don't know the legalities. The new thing I heard was that Willowick would be responsible to pay for Willowick and Beechwood. I wouldn't be for that either. I don't think that's fair. I know it's been said by state representatives that they're trying to work on that, which does us no good. But that being said, it's a law that the state passed. I think eventually the state needs to get involved because it's going to keep happening. And I think it sends a bad message to our current firemen, potential ones. I think we're still looking for part-time firefighters, but what does that say to our city when, if Mr. Palumbo, who was named after, if we fight this and are trying to fight it, and another fireman that happens to, why would they want to come work here if they're thinking, well, the city's not going to support me? I don't know what the premiums are. I don't know what it would cost us. But that's why I think the state's going to have to get involved. It can't be just on the cities because no city could afford that, with what happens. But I think we have to show a message to our fire department and the people that protect us that we do care about you and, we want to support you. But again, we don't know all the legalities. So until we do, I guess, we won't know.
Ma'am, could I follow up on that? please, for 30 seconds?
Actually, let me give you this because there was a related question claiming that there were 9 years of missing records concerning the case.
I'm really glad
So-
that came up.
so
No, I am.
you each get 2 minutes to address
I'm
that.
prepared to deal with it. So,
Okay.
let me say a few things. The first thing I want to say is that I've heard this before, that we are fighting and that he was denied under the law bearing his name. He initially went, after he unfortunately passed away, his lawyers and his estate filed under the law bearing his name. While that matter was on appeal, and it was on appeal again for the issues I discussed with respect to assessing responsibility as between two municipalities, his lawyers, listen to me very carefully, his lawyers decided to refile not under the Palumbo Act. They filed under the Occupational Disease Act. So they had a presumption under the Palumbo Act, and his attorneys decided to change course and submit under occupational disease. And so we went through that process and we were successful because we established our expert, which we've heard a lot about. The Bureau of Workers' Compensation expert agreed with our expert as to the causation issue. And it was on appeal for most of the summer. And so that's important because he was not denied under the law named under his name, excuse me. Now, as to the affidavit and 9 years of records, I brought this 2 meetings ago. These are the affidavits that were submitted on behalf of the city. There was an accusation that was made in the hearing in July. These affidavits were prepared. The matter was fully investigated. It was not relevant. There is nothing being hidden. I offered these documents to my opponent. She did not take them. They are here. I have them with me tonight. Any one of you are welcome to come up here and look at these affidavits on behalf of the city. The records were not hidden. They were disclosed in discovery. His lawyers decided not to look at them, but they were not concealed, and these affidavits were accepted by the commission. So they are here for anyone to view. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gannon, do you have anything to add to that?
There's nothing to add to that. That's no. I mean, we've had this discussion, like Council President said, and I am 100%. We're 100% in agreement on that.
Mrs. Kudella?
Nothing to add. Like it's been said several times at the council meeting, it is a complex situation. And there's a lot of information that could not be disclosed at the time and still can't be disclosed. And,
you know, we're, like we've said, we make a decision based on the information we're given at the time. Thank you.
Mr. Helmut?
I already
Anything? Okay.
No.
There's another question.
Oh, okay. We are going to finish up at 7:45, so these will be the last two questions. And then each of the candidates will have 3 minutes to say anything they want in closing. My understanding is they'll hang around a little bit if you want to talk to them individually. Is that correct?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so until the library closes, don't make them push the librarians. So-
It's a Browns game. Browns
Oh,
game.
yeah. Okay. How can we better improve residential properties that are in disrepair, such as peeling garages and unkempt yards? Let's begin with Mr. Helmrich.
How can we?
How can we as a city council maybe enforce disrepair?
I mean, ultimately, it's up to the owners of that property to take care of that. However, if there are properties that are bank-owned and things like that, I think the city, and I don't know, these gentlemen, and Monica might be able to answer. At one point, I knew the city had somebody that went around and monitored houses and stayed on track, kept track, and would go back and issue stuff. I don't know if we still have that person on staff here anymore. You know, if not, I think I'd like to know why we don't, and that's all I can say about that, really.
Okay. Mrs. Kudella.
So this is what our housing and zoning department is for. You know, they do drive around the city, look for any violations that they can. Most of these things, though, need to be reported by residents. You know, a lot of the calls that I get are, you know, their neighbors have high grass. I know we have one that the neighbor's yard, the grass was 2 feet tall, and I think Mike actually took care of it, called scene, and you know, they're written a violation, and then those people have to comply with it. You know, if not, they end up going to court. The city takes them to court, so eventually it does get done. For the most part, people, once they get the violation from the city, take care of it pretty quickly. The second thing that we have currently is the community reinvestment area. So if people want to make improvements, additions, updates to their homes, they can apply for that and could get a tax break to do those things, you know, to increase their property value, to increase the value of their home. So there's ways to go about it, but we have to report it. You know, that the housing department can't be everywhere, they can't see everything. So most of what they do is by residential complaints. So that's what I'm here for. You know, I give my name, my number, my phone number, my email address. So if there's something you see, something you want done, that's what I'm here for. I'm the liaison. Call me and I'll get you to the right person. Thank you.
Mr. Vanny.
Thank you. Yes, our building department, Steve Brennan does a great job. He is on speed dial with me, pretty much. And this kind of ties in, well, first of all, we are short. We need another full-time employee in that department. There's no doubt about it. Because there's a lot of, all we do, basically, all our ordinances in the summer are grass cutting ordinances, where we're going out, putting liens on people's houses because they're not cutting their grass. How we do this, how we manage this, most of the complaints come from actually the residents. And like Councilwoman Cadella said, we get calls. We give Cena a call, he takes care of it. You know, we're driving around, I'm driving around, I see a car parked or I see a grass, you know, I'll make the call too. But we don't have the luxury of someone walking around anymore. We just don't have that luxury anymore. We don't have the money to do that. However, that kind of ties in with what I'm working now with the law director. Because there's houses, like I've seen over the 15 years, it's the same house over and over again. We shouldn't be having to go out there 3, 4, 5 times. So what I'm proposing to do, and hopefully the law director can draft something up that can get passed, is, you know, if we're out there 3 times, we got it documented, you know, the 3rd time out, we're gonna find the owner. Because we're just wasting energy, we're wasting money for us going out there. You need to take care of your yard, because it's not fair to your neighbors.
Mr. Patton.
Thank you. With some repetition, I will say that Sean Brennan, aside from any of our police officers, has the most thankless job in the city. And so he has to enforce our zoning codes, and that's what we do. We do that because it maintains our property values, and it's frankly not fair to those of us that pay high property taxes and those of us that take care of our property. And so it's really in two pieces, as Councilwoman Cadella mentioned in her answer. So one is Mr. Brennan being out there and holding the line on our ordinances to maintain our standards and to make sure that owners maintain their property. But then what we now have in our partnership with the municipal court is now we have an enforcement mechanism. So that's the answer, is to maintain it both on our end in terms of inspections, in terms of dealing with complaints, and then coordinating with our law director and our city prosecutor to make sure that it's enforced through the Willoughby Muni Court. And it's one of the key components that we have to maintain our standards in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last question is on a totally different topic than we've discussed tonight, and actually one that interests me. With regard to sustainability and considering the global environment crisis, what are your 21st century plans to protect our environment and the health and to protect us and future generations, such as renewable energy? Let's begin with Mr. Vanek.
Thank you. Well, I'm not gonna make something up. I don't have anything as far as renewable energy, but this does tie in with the sewers, because with the sewer rehab we're doing, everyone's concerned, especially the EPA, about I&I, infiltration, sanitary running into the sewer, into the storm sewer, and that's what we're doing all this rehab for. That's why we established the master sewer study plan 5 years ago. So again, it's not energy, but it does play into, because the EPA does not want, I will tell you this, the EPA would rather have your basement flood than that going into the lake. They don't care about your basement flood. They just don't. We've got to care about both though, because if we don't want anyone's basement flooding, number one, and number two, if we have I&I, they're going to come down on us real hard. So we've got to make sure we're doing both, and again, that ties into the environment. As far as, like I said, energy, I really, there's nothing that comes to mind off the top of my head. So.
Okay, Mr. Helmrich.
It's out of my expertise. I'm not really familiar with any of that. So.
Okay, very good. Mrs. Cadella.
Well, like Mike said, we continue to make improvements to the sewers throughout the years because of the EPA. The lake is our biggest asset, and we want to protect that. So with the slip lining and replacements and updates that we've been doing throughout the years, that's one way we go about that. It would be great for residents as well to replace the residential end of the sewers as well to alleviate some of those issues. And then we currently are working on the special, the SID, what does it stand for again? Special Improvement District?
Yes.
Okay, so it's to help, it's to help the residents that live along the lake protect their property, to put in some type of retaining wall or different things to both protect the lake and the property. So that's something definitely that interests the residents of our area. We need to do what we can to protect our greatest asset and what brings a lot of us here. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Patton.
The most environmentally relevant thing that we do, as they've mentioned, as my colleagues have mentioned, are the sewers. And I think the other thing, I'm not sure whether it was mentioned, is point of sale inspections. As most of you know, they were pouring 25 basements a day in the city of Willowick during its building heyday, and needless to say, there was one inspector and a lot of work going on, and so not everything was connected properly, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but that's reality. And so we do have a high I&I rate. I think it's upwards of 30% failure at point of inspection. Nobody wants to be told when they're trying to sell their house that they have to cough up another $10,000 to have the sewers rerun, but unfortunately that's what it is in many cases. And so the point is, we do not want our storm sewers surcharging into the sanitary sewers such that we have raw sewage going out in the lake during storms in the summertime, and then people can't obviously swim in the lake and you get those health alerts. So I think our most environmentally relevant action that we can take is to do point of sale inspections and to maintain our sewers. It's not attractive, it's not nice to talk about, but that's what we can do.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to give each of the candidates 3 minutes to share their thoughts, their rebuttal, anything that they think is relevant. And we will begin with our candidate for council at large, Mr. Patton.
Would you want me to approach the lectern again?
It's up to you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's better
This
for the camera.
gentleman's saying yes, so I'll listen to him. I will be brief. I want to follow up on the question about the taxes. You've heard my thoughts about the taxes, but I did vote to have it put on the ballot. The ultimate decision maker with respect to the taxes is you, the residents, because it's your money. And so while I have my own views on it, I would, certainly respect whatever the residents decide to do. The one thing that I would emphasize that's come out during tonight's meeting is the fact that we have a lot of tough decisions to make. This is not the time for on-the-job training. What I can offer you, if you vote for me, is a proven leadership, a proven leader with a steady hand at the wheel. We've been through many storms. I have the gray hair to prove it, and that's what I offer. And so I'm asking for your vote. If you want calm, steady leadership for your city, please vote for me in November. Thank you.
And to the candidates for Ward 1, we will go in the same order of the draw. So Mrs. Kudela.
Thank you again, everyone, for being here tonight. Like everyone has said, we make our best decisions with the information that we're provided. I'm not perfect. I never claim to be, but I always try to do better and improve myself, and I try to make educated decisions. I do believe that I can see both sides of a situation and then make a decision from there. This would be my first election. I hope to stay here. I've enjoyed the past 3.5 years representing the residents. I've got to meet a lot of residents. I've talked to many residents on the phone, and I am here to do whatever you need me to do. Like I've said before, you can call, email me, call me, contact me, however you need to. So I'm here, and I hope to be here for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Mr. Helmrich.
Again, my name's Steve Hemrich. I have no experience. I have a lot to learn, it's obvious. But I think everybody started at some point where I'm at, so thank you. Hey, for the little. I can just promise you I'll always be available for you. I don't have all the answers. Like I said, I have a lot to learn, but I will always make myself available. If I have the answer right then and there, I'll give it to you. I'll do whatever I can to find out those answers. I'd love to get feedback from the residents. I think in a city like ours, we're a small community. This is our city, so I think getting input from the residents is crucial. You should be able to come to your council person, whatever ward you're in, and always come to them, ideals, suggestions, what you like, what you don't like. That's what's going to make our city better. So, I think Ward 1, I think we're in a good ward. I like Mike personally. I like Monica. She's hired me to do appraisals for her before.
Twice.
Mike, you haven't, so. But he's an appraiser too, but in true story, I will tell this. Mike came to my house when my wife and I bought our house in '99. We got a little jammed with our interest rate. All of a sudden, when we went to sign those papers, that interest rate jumped up. '99, I want to say it was 10 or 11%, which was a sticker shock. So they said, don't worry, you could refinance down the road. A couple months, we're like, okay. First time home buyers, young, just wanted to get a house. So a few months went by and we had an appraisal done. Mike Vanny was a gentleman that came out to do the appraisal. Didn't know him. I knew he was at my house for about 15 minutes and I paid him $250. And I looked at my wife and I said, that's the job I want. No idea what he did after. And to be honest, as an appraiser, all the work, the easy part is coming to the house, I think, and doing that. It's all the other stuff. So I think we have good people here. I have nothing bad to say about current council or the mayor. I think these people aren't doing it for the money. I think everybody knows that. I think they genuinely care about the city. I care about the city. I'm a 20-year resident. I don't plan on going anywhere, my wife and I. I'll do the best I can for you. It's sad that it's taken me 20 years to get more interested in the city. I just paid my taxes, well, allegedly, of course. Went about my way, but I've taken more of an interest for our city. I care about it. I'd like to be a part of helping it. And if I don't win for council, which doesn't sound good saying this, I've talked to the mayor and others. I'd like to get involved in more committees. The Willowick Citywide Garage Sale, I was a part of planning and putting together along with Keith Beck. I love doing stuff like that. If we can do more stuff like that for our city to generate revenue or more enjoyment for the residents, that's what I'm about. So My name's Steve Hemrich, and I'm asking for your vote on November 5th, and thank you very much.
Mr. Danny.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming out, and thank the League of Women Voters for having this. This is great. It's a really good turnout. So it really is. I'm really impressed. Everyone came out tonight. I tell you, it's been a good 15 years. I'm excited about the next 4 years and a little scared because we do have some tough decisions. But I like where we're going. I want to be part of it. When I first came in, things were like on autopilot. Everybody was doing good. You know, nothing. We had money to do everything. The general fund balance was like 1.4 million. Boy, you know, it's like, wow, this is great. Then the recession hit, and it's like, wow. Then, you know, this job become real tough because you're dealing, you know, we live here too. So when I make a decision, I got to be able to answer why I made that decision because I'm not a state rep. I don't have interns working for me. I'm at the stores here. People have come to my house and asked me questions, which is fine. I'm always available on my cell phone. It's great. That's what's great about living here. I've been here over half my life. But you realize when you got to make tough decisions, you've really got to throw that emotion out and you've got to think about what you're doing and try to do the best. And I agree with Councilwoman Cadell. You've got to look at both sides before you make a decision. Because I've had people call me and say, why did you make that? Why did you do this? And if I don't have an answer for them, then I'm not doing my job. You might not agree with me, but I got to give you an answer. So I'm, again, very excited about the next 4 years. I really am. I know we got tough decisions, but I'm very excited about it. And I hope you'll consider me for a re-election on November 5th. So thank you very much.
I would like to thank Mayor Regovich and his very capable assistant, Sue, who really pulled things together for me, for inviting us, and certainly to the library for hosting us. And I am very impressed with the turnout here. We have had county-wide elections where we have had fewer people turn out. It is very important as residents, as citizens, to know your candidates. And again, the two who did not come tonight had very good reasons, so don't hold that against them. But I think you have some very capable candidates, and I wish all of them good luck. And I wish all of you a good evening. Thank you.